Yeah, that's right. I know, I saw it.
Well, we can start.
Yeah.
Minutes.
No, second reading.
It was 4:30, as I told her, she probably saw the 3 minutes before.
We're gonna go off the clock, give Joe a couple minutes. We should all sigh when he walks in.
He promised he would be here.
Yeah, I saw him today, so.
He'll be here.
We felt that you know.
Yeah. See?
Yeah, he's
I
right.
talked to him at like 3:00.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Tallmer, I believe, is on his way, so we'll have a few things to do before anything else. I think we can go ahead, it says, call the meeting of the Warsaw Redevelopment to order. And we'll start off by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. So, first thing up is approval of the minutes for our meeting on February 3rd. I didn't see anything amiss there.
No, I read the minutes, so I would make a motion to approve them as presented.
Okay, Mike's made a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
And Bill has seconded that. So we have first and second. All in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
Perfect.
Perfect. And Joe was here, we have a full plate and. So new business,
So we have some documents that we're going to review and some public hearings. I'm going to let Randy come up and talk about the process that we're going to go through. So there will be 2 public hearings and 2 resolutions. So Randy will explain that. And we'll open up the public hearing portion, do a resolution and so forth. But go ahead and explain the process, Randy.
Sure. So this is the second public hearing. You held the first one last month, and this is all part of the process to complete the approvals necessary to do the financing for the municipal services garage. And so the first hearing, there was no resolution adopted. Tonight, after the public hearing, there would be a resolution, and I can just speak to the resolution now. The resolution essentially indicates your preliminary determination to enter into a lease that will cause the redevelopment authority to issue bonds. The redevelopment authority met earlier this afternoon, and it adopted its resolution approving a form of lease and authorizing the issuance of bonds. The balance, the resolution sets out the bond amount, the $14.5 million, which is the maximum not to exceed, and it lays out all of the other information in the resolution that is in the preliminary determination information that's right here on the table that Andy went through at the last meeting and certainly could cover again if you want in summary, however you want to handle it. But the resolution, this is the next step in the process in terms of what you would do. You would provide for this preliminary determination resolution. The notice of this would get published later this week. Also tonight on the agenda is a second public hearing, which would relate to the lease itself. That would be the lease between you and the Redevelopment Authority for the lease of certain streets in the city. Recall, we're structuring this as a lease financing so that you would be leasing certain streets from the Redevelopment Authority. The city will transfer its interest in those streets to the Redevelopment Authority. That's just the financing mechanism to allow the authority to issue its bonds. You then would pay lease rentals under that lease, and the lease rentals would be, the source of revenue for those lease rentals would be the tax levy that would be levied to pay the debt service on the bonds, basically. So the next step would be the public hearing, which would be the second public hearing, and then consideration of this first resolution. So I'm happy to answer questions, or I don't know if Andy, if you want to go through the financing again in summary. Yeah, that'd be helpful.
Well, good afternoon, Redevelopment Commission members. Andy Mauser with Baker Tilly. So at your last meeting, we did go through the preliminary determination information sheet. I've brought additional copies here for this meeting in case there's anyone that was unable to attend. As Randy mentioned, your resolutions here this evening do have some of those same figures. The resolution, the preliminary determination resolution does have much of the same information that was in that information sheet. So it does mention maximum principal amount of the bonds of $14.5 million. Based on the current size of the project, we currently estimate that would be just under $13.5 million. So again, under the maximum amount in the resolution. It also mentions a interest rate not anticipated to exceed 4.77%. We currently would anticipate a net interest rate on the bonds somewhere in the 4 to 4.5% range. It also mentions total estimated interest across the life of the financing of about just under 6.8 million. It also includes maximum lease rental on the financing of 1.3 million. Based on the current size of the project and current interest rates, we would estimate that would be just under 1.1 million currently. So again, under that 1.3 million. It also talks about the city's existing debt service levies and tax rates. So for the 2016 fire station bonds and then the 2023 Park District bonds, the city currently levies about $483,000 per year for debt service on those two existing financings, which results in a tax rate of about 3.42 cents per $100 of assessed value. Based on the size of the project and current interest rate estimates, we would again estimate that new debt service on the new financing would be just under $1.1 million, and that would result in a tax rate of about 7 cents per $100 of assessed value. Again, as we've talked about at your previous meetings, because of a number of factors, we think the actual impact on taxpayers will be much less than what's shown in the preliminary determination documents. Again, those factors are the strong assessed value growth that the city's seen. So as your tax base has continued to grow, that's continued to push tax rates down, which gives you the ability to issue additional debt on a tax rate neutral basis. As we've also discussed, you'll have the ability not only to levy a property tax for the new bonds, but to the extent there's TIF revenues available, to the extent economic development, local income tax is available, the city could utilize those sources to buy down the debt service, which then would reduce what you would have to levy on your property taxpayers. And then I think it's also important to note that the 2016 fire station bonds and the 2023 Parks District bonds, those will both be fully repaid after 2031. So you've really just got the next 5 to 6 years when you'll have all three projects outstanding. And then from 2032 and beyond, it will just be the street department bonds. And then again, many of your taxpayers are already at the property tax caps. So the circuit breaker credits that are in place in the state of Indiana limit homestead properties to 1%, other residential property to 2%, and then any commercial or industrial property to 3%. And many of your 1% and 2% taxpayers are already at the caps. So to the extent we do see a slight increase in tax rate from the new project, many of those taxpayers would not see an actual increase in their tax bills. So I'd be glad to answer questions, but again, it is much of the same information that was at your last meeting for the public hearing as well.
don't have any questions, you can open the public hearing portion, George.
Yeah, so anybody have any questions for Andrew or Randy? If not, we'll open up the public hearing. Is there anybody here to speak for or against this project? Looks like not. So we can close the public hearing, right? Close that. So.
So you'd be looking for a motion on resolution 2025-0301.
Jeremy, just a quick question to you. I know you've been keeping up on a lot of what's happening down in Indianapolis with regards to property taxes and discussion of public projects and bonding, and Randy, maybe you're certainly well-versed in, well, no one knows what's going to happen, but I guess that's the question. Do either of you anticipate potentially that that could impact this project? Or do you feel like if we move on this now, we're probably a little ahead of any changes that could occur?
I think to the extent we're at the halfway mark, I guess today, of the legislative session, you're right, Lord knows how it'll end up. Between the bill as it is and what the governor wants, there certainly will be changes to the residential side with the deductions and all of that. I think from an approval standpoint, we'll have completed the approvals basically for the bonds themselves. The question would be, as we get into April and May, what the final version of the legislation looks like, Senate Bill 1. I think it's Senate Bill 1. And so what we would always have the opportunity at that point to take a look and see how, whatever the impact is, and Andy of Baker Tilly and his team could update the numbers, if you will, based on those assumptions, and we'd have an opportunity to then take a look. But at this point, from a financing standpoint, the approvals are fine. We're not envisioning any changes there. And from a tax impact, I think because of where things are with the circuit breaker on the residential side, there probably wouldn't be much of an impact, and I'm straying into your territory, I suppose, but it may have some impact on the rate on the commercial side. Because I think most of the property tax relief is more on the residential and agricultural that I've seen thus far. So there may be, if there is an impact, it may be on the commercial side in terms of some of the rate assumptions. I don't know if Andy, if that's fair.
The only thing maybe I would add, we've talked a little bit about the new debt being tax rate neutral. I think some of the changes working their way through the State House could actually make this more so tax rate neutral. One of the big pieces of Senate Bill 1 is a cap on what's known as the max levy growth quotient. So the ability for the city to raise your property tax levy year over year. That'll be limited to actually no growth in 2026, and then 1% in 27, 2% in 28 if Senate Bill 1 passes as it is. So as the city is limited in what you can raise in property taxes, but your assessed value continues to grow, that will actually push tax rates down potentially more than what we've seen in the past few years, as your assessed value growth has outpaced your levy growth. That could actually kind of magnify from what we've seen here in the past few years, which then allows the debt to really be issued more on a tax rate neutral basis than if kind of current max levy growth was allowed. So unfortunately, it could put a little bit of pressure on city general fund and other funds as well, as it does have some impact there. But from a debt perspective, I think it makes this slide in a little bit easier alongside other tax rates as well.
Appreciate it. I know there's not a perfect answer. No one knows where we're going with this thing.
And still lots of changes that could happen here in the next couple months before it's finalized.
Okay,
I think with edit and TIF as our backup, that helps too, because edit won't necessarily be dependent on the property taxes. But it would, obviously, the more money you take out of edit, it would impact what other projects we were able to do.
And wouldn't it be fair to say, that's a great question, Joe, thank you. Wouldn't it be fair to say that this is a preliminary agreement to enter into a lease? We're not committing to anything financially yet, are we? I mean, if things should change down there radically, we would still have the opportunity to
Well,
wait if we wanted to?
this is the process that we're going through until we issue the bonds, which is what Randy was saying. April will go through, be the end of the process, the first week in April, but we would still make a determination to issue the bonds, and that's.
Right.
what it is now.
The bonds wouldn't be issued until late May at this
Okay.
point. So we're going through the approval process now, and so in terms of the approvals, we would be through the approvals in early April. The meetings today with the authority, the commission, and the council kind of complete the public process, if you will. The lease will get signed, and then we publish all the notices, and we have to wait for a period of time. Then we go through the rating process, and then the bonds are sold. So the session is supposed to end at the end of April, I think maybe the 28th, if I remember. But in any event, the bonds wouldn't be sold until late May. So certainly between the mayor and the council and you all and Jeremy, if there's radical change that would have a significant impact, Andy would kind of retool the numbers at that point and can let you know. And you would have the ability to sort of, beyond just the public approvals for the financing, which will have been completed, we'd have the opportunity to address anything that may result because of a radical difference in what is being proposed today in the General Assembly, so.
Which is, I guess, the point that I was wanting to make.
Yes.
Right.
that We would still have time to,
There would be time to sort of retool if necessary. There aren't any more public approvals after today's meetings, but
Right.
certainly the city, through the mayor's office and the council and Jeremy, you would have the ability to take a last look, if you will, at the end of the session to make sure it's not so significant that would cause everyone to want to take a step and take a breath.
Yeah, up until we determine to issue the bonds, we'll have that ability to.
Any other questions about the resolution?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2025-0301.
Okay, Bill's made a motion to approve the resolution as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, Joe seconded that. So first and a second. All in favor of passing resolution 2025-03-01, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those against? Nay. Okay, it passed. And then public hearing, right, on the,
Yeah, so you have, the next would be opening up a public hearing on the proposed lease with the Warsaw Redevelopment Authority, which would be Resolution 2025-0302. Do you want to talk to that first, Behold? Yeah, it makes more sense to have the explanation for the resolution and then open the public hearing.
So this relates specifically between the lease between the Redevelopment Commission and the Redevelopment Authority. And again, the lease mechanism, I didn't speak to it earlier, but just to say it again, I know I said it at the last meeting, the lease mechanism allows the city, the Redevelopment Commission, to issue debt or cause debt to be issued on their behalf that aren't subject to the constitutional debt limit. The 2% debt limit in the Indiana Constitution was created a long time ago, and 2% of the assessed value back then probably would have financed most projects, but these days a dollar doesn't go as far as it used to, and so the statutes, schools, counties, cities, redevelopment commissions, all have the ability to enter into lease financings. And so using the lease financing mechanism is very common. And again, it's set up as I described, there's something to lease. The authority will get an interest in the streets that are, Jeremy had come up with the value of the streets that roughly equate to the lease rental value being paid under the lease. The authority will lease that to the commission, and the commission can make a lease payment to the commission, or to the authority. And the authority will use that lease payment to pay the bonds. So what you're approving here is the form of the lease itself. As Andy mentioned, the maximum lease rental right now is 1.3 million in the lease, and that would support the maximum bond amount. The assumption is that the lease rental will come down ever so slightly, just based on the actual interest rates. I think Andy said it's closer to 1.1 million, just based on where the project is size-wise and current interest rates. The lease will be a maximum of 20 years. Once the bonds are sold, if we end up selling 19 years or 19 and a half or 18 years, whatever, the lease term would be reduced as well. But then going forward then, the tax would be levied. You would use the revenues from that tax to pay the lease rental, supplemented by any other revenues that the city may choose to use going forward, TIF or edit. And that lease rental again would be used to pay the debt service. When the bonds are paid off, the lease would go away. Essentially, the lease itself, in a way, is a legal fiction because it creates the mechanism for you to be able to make a payment without it being considered debt. The Indiana Supreme Court has indicated that lease payments are not debt. So that's more into the weeds maybe than you wanted to be, but that's the resolution that's before you, to approve the form of the lease, authorize its execution, and it does require a public hearing separate and apart from the hearing you just held.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Jeremy, I just have a point of clarification. When George announced the vote, he said 2025-0301, and it's not. It's 2025-0202. Is that correct?
Oh, that's what it said on my, oh, that was,
That's the new one. This was the second hearing from last month's that we approved. Is that correct?
But this
Should be,
resolution.
yeah, this should be, the first one was 2025-0301. This one should be 2025-0302.
Because the resolution you adopted before wasn't introduced last month. It was just the public hearing. There was no resolution before you.
So we voted on 2025-0301. That's what I want to clarify.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and
Yep.
now we're moving to,
02.
thank you.
Yep. So we'd open up the public hearing, and then you could,
is there anyone here to speak for or against the resolution, the execution of the lease with the Redevelopment Authority? Hearing none. Guess we can close the public hearing.
Yep. Good. So having closed the public hearing, you'd make a motion on resolution 2025-0302.
I will make that motion to accept resolution 2025-0302.
Okay, Mike has made a motion to approve. Second.
Second.
Second, all right, Bill, thank you. Bill's made, seconded. So we have a first and a second to approve. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? All right, it passed.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, next we have an agreement with Fend and Brown.
Yes, so at the last meeting, we made an award to Fenn and Brown for the 300 North project. That project bid was opened at the Board of Works a couple of weeks ago. We awarded it at our last meeting, and now you have the agreement between us and the contractor to complete that work, which is Fenn and Brown, which was the low bidder, with, I think it was a little over, $724,224.60. And this will come out, this is a match program with CCMG, the state, so we'll pay 50% of that $724,224 will come out of the Northern TIF District project budget.
Any questions on the agreement that you voted for last month?
I assume it's a pretty standard road contract.
Yes, yeah, and Aaron's here if you have any questions on the contract. But Aaron put together the bid and reviewed the contract. Our engineers designed the project, and it was submitted to the state for the 50% with Dustin's help. So, yeah, I mean, pretty cut and dry road project for us.
Yeah, if there's no other concerns, I would make a motion to approve this.
Okay, Joe's made a motion to approve the agreement. Do I hear a second? Jack has seconded. Jack has seconded that. So we have a first and a second. All in favor of approving the agreement, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Everybody said aye, so. That's unanimous. Downtown Culture District Plan.
Yeah, so I think Terry Sweeney has put together a document that's in front of you requesting some funds for the Downtown Cultural District Plan. And he's here if you have any questions from him, but it kind of outlines a list of projects that we would be working with Terry on, including the Cultural District Plan. He has sought some funding from the businesses, which they are contributing to this plan. They'll have some buy-in. So he more or less is requesting some funds out of what would be now the Northern TIF district as we combined with the Central TIF district last year. So we would set aside those funds. I want to say it's around $70,000 for professional services for those cultural district plans this year. A lot of this came out of the Hyatt Palma study when we determined it was needed to hire a downtown coordinator. Terry has fit that role and has been working diligently on putting these plans together. You should have the 2030 strategic plan as part of your documentation as we continue to work on improving our downtown and taking those next steps moving forward would be this cultural district plan.
Well, I, for one, am very gratified for where we stand today with regards to downtown development. Our first Hyatt Palma study was back in 2001, and we moved like a community in a very positive direction, and downtown benefited and I think set us up for now this next level. I read through the plan. I think the collaboration is evident, and I feel very gratified we're at a point where we're considering this type of request, to be quite frank.
Yeah, we've had a lot of conversations over the last 6 months on the direction we're heading and trying to accomplish the tasks that were outlaid in that Hyatt Palma study, and which will be in this 2030 strategic plan. Just trying to enhance and improve our downtown, I think, is important. And having Terry on board, someone focused within that area has been really helpful to me. So being able to continue this funding and pushing those various developments forward will be important.
I've got a couple questions, Terry. My assumption is that these planning dollars are going to kind of give us a way forward, kind of a blueprint for future projects.
Yeah, what we're hoping, a couple things. One of our overriding strategies contained in the 2030 plan is become a certified cultural district with the state of Indiana. And so this plan will kind of position us for that, as well as it's with an eye towards the Ready and Lilly endowment funds and positioning us hopefully for a request to them to fund some of the projects that might come out of this and/or from other funding opportunities. We have selected a consultant group named Designing Local, and they are approved by the Indiana Economic Development Corporation as consultants that were doing the regional ready planning, as well as the Indiana Arts Commission. And so we're looking forward to the partnership with the Public Arts Commission here and working together to kind of lay out that plan.
So I've seen the booklet, I've seen the board. I know there's a council member from the city and the mayor's on the board. I know a lot of these projects rely on some of the work the Redevelopment Commission will do, the access to grants that the city has, and I've always felt that it's important that the city have a good, and I know they have a seat at the table, but have an ability to weigh in on these projects at their very earliest stages.
Yeah.
Again, understanding some of the funding challenges that local governments may face in the future. That being said, I think what you put together, the work, the requests that you've made, much appreciate that you're in the position you're in. I know you did a lot of really good work when you first came to this community, and I see that carrying forward with what you've shown today, and I'm really excited that you're going to be leading this. So with that, always important to speak up for the interests of the city.
Yeah. Yeah. One, I'm hoping that, again, this takes us further down the road, but also, my experience with in other cities working in downtowns is, our role to a certain degree is how do we continue to enhance the TIF, the revenues, and the vitality, and this is all kind of in line with that kind of work.
Yeah. That's a great comment, and I appreciate it, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Are you asking for approval of the funding?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, I would make that motion.
Okay, Joe's made a motion to approve
Yes.
the plan.
Second.
Okay, Bill has seconded that. So we have a first and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Those against? No. All right. Next up, memorandum of understanding to create an outlet, the building, the property we own on.
Yeah, so what I'm basically asking for is your approval to move forward with creating an MOU or a purchase agreement for a potential outlot on the Marsh property, and you kind of been given some exhibits on what that would look like. The intent here is that to give this approval so that the potential purchaser of that property owner can move forward with due diligence and what they need to do to make sure that it works on their end. We will put together an MOU or a purchase agreement working with Randy's team that would come before you at a later time, but really wanted to get your approval and commitment behind the process before we would move forward and create an outlot and create a purchase agreement and so forth. So by having this approval now, we'll work with the property owner or the prospective purchaser and put those agreements together, give them the time that they need to do their due diligence to see if this is a viable opportunity.
And they requested this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have submitted a purchase agreement. Obviously, how we dispose of property is a little bit different than just a purchase agreement, and we'll work with Randy to put that process together, but they need more or less a commitment from us that we're willing to move forward with this so that they can do the things that they need to do on their end.
Jeremy, I know we had some discussion about this. I certainly support this. I just wanted to make sure that the lot is subdivided so that it could accommodate whatever happens in the future on that
Yep.
property. And I know you and I talked about that, and it looks to me like this lot addresses that concern.
Yep.
The way it is, and so I appreciate that, having an opportunity to look at that. And I think you've done a good job with that, so.
Yeah, I think it's certainly, and we've had a lot of conversations with different entities and trying to figure out and it all came back to seem to be a very positive perspective moving forward on what the impact would be. So whether it be from an ability to market the marsh property in the future, getting some excitement and creating something new there. So I'm fully in support of doing this. And I've had a lot of conversations with each of you over the last month, and it all seemed positive and moving forward, so.
Yeah, I think it looks very good. And I agree for those same reasons. I think that this will generate some interest and potential more ideas down on that property.
Yep.
I agree. I'm hoping it'll be a real catalyst for that whole side of town, actually. I'd make a motion to approve.
So Mike has made a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding.
Or to create a memorandum,
Or
to
to
move forward
create.
with creating a memorandum of understanding.
Great. Yeah, live on the marsh property. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Jack has seconded that. So first is
From the South Side Gang.
the south side. So we have a first and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Okay. it
Jeremy,
passed.
would you just remind us of the process they will need to go through to subdivide this?
The subdivision process is, since we're the property owner, we would be the ones that would be moving forward. We would first make sure that, because this is, they have kind of a proposed layout in here, so we would make sure that that was what, we'll verify that that's exactly what we want, but it's our property, so we would move through the subdivision, it would go through the plan commission to subdivide that property and get recorded.
At their appeal,
Yes.
at their request?
I mean, they're
Yeah.
requesting it, yes, but since it's our property,
Right.
we, being the Warsaw Redevelopment Commission, would be the applicant before the Plan Commission to subdivide our property. Because it's property disposition, it is in a TIF district, so we have some flexibility in how we dispose of that. And that part, I will work with Randy to put together how that is done, because the cities can't just dispose of property like normal people would, so we have some hoops we got to jump through. But that was the point of getting your approval to work with Randy to put together, whether it's a purchase agreement or MOU, we'll decide what best fits that. But once we've decided that path forward, then we can work with the prospective purchaser and putting those agreements together and the process of us being able to dispose of property. So step one would be creating the lot. Once we've got the final details, we're all dialed in and know exactly what that lot will look like, what size, what location, then we'll do that subdivision before the Plan Commission.
Thank you.
The last item in new business is an engagement letter with Barnes and Thornburg for the Residential Infrastructure Fund, which we saw approval last year to submit for the Residential Infrastructure Fund through the state. We were awarded as part of that fund, and now we'll be going through the bond process to take advantage of those funds that were set aside by the state. So we were awarded $1,055,000, I believe, as part of that RIF loan fund. and working with Randy and Baker Tilly to go through that bond process over the next month and a half or so. This is just that engagement letter for their services to work on that project.
I see Scott's reviewed this too, so pretty standard. Anybody have any questions about our engagement with letter with Barnes and Thornburg?
Motion to approve.
Joe has made a motion to approve, thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, Bill has seconded that. So first and second, all in favor of approving the engagement letter with Barnes and Thornburg, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Approval of claims, Jeremy.
We have a few. We've got 2 Indiana American Water claims for the Marsh Building, 235.97, 163.49. We've got 2 A&Z engineering claims for ongoing engineering services, one for 300 North in the amount of $4,654.25, and one for the roundabout at 200 North and Husky Trail in the amount of $8,998.83. Times Union notice for the 300 North project, $14.58. Times Union subscription, that's our subscription to Time Union for 200. Times Union annexation advertisement, $45.99. Award Co, $400 is for the Employee Award Co program instituted by the Human Resource Department. Barnes and Thornburg, $635 for Warsaw Chemical Project. My cell phone allowance, $120. Kosciuszko KDI, $300 of the Peak Med office space rental agreement. And then West Hill Development, $42,000 is for the lease agreement for the Shell Building, number 3.
Anybody have any questions about the claims?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, Bill's made a motion to approve the claims as presented. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Jack has seconded it. Thank you. So first and second, all in favor of approving the claims signify by saying aye.
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 Other business?
I don't have any other business, but I am working on the report that is required by the state, and I'm hoping to have that done in the next week and a half. I will send that out to you so that you'll have it before the next meeting. It will be presented at our April meeting, because I think it's due by April 15th to the state. So we'll present that. I'll have it in your hands the next week and a half. You can ask any questions at the next meeting in March, and then we will present it in its final form at the April meeting.
At our March 17th meeting, we'll be at 4, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, take a little note of that. All right.
That's all I got.
Any other items to come forward? If not,
Motion to adjourn.
there's a motion to
Second.
adjourn and a second. Bill and Jack. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Setting up with Mitch, take care of my. Oh, yeah, how'd that come out? Good. Did you have something in there?
Oh, yeah.